job right there.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA. And if you told me back in 1999 that Limp Bizkit would be one of the most important bands in all of rock and metal, I would have looked at you like you had three heads. Because back then, there was no band that was more hated by the music media than Limp Bizkit. But now, it's a different story. Nu metal was the absolute peak of metal in terms of its mainstream appeal, and Limp Bizkit were and are the kings of the genre, with over 40 million albums sold. And to this day, that image of Fred Durst with his backwards red hat takes you right back to watching Nookie on TRL with some bagel bites and a Mountain Dew after school. At this point, they're icons. And they've achieved all of that despite the fact that they've never really gotten an ounce of credit from critics or the media, being labeled as like white trash or frat boy music, or even indirectly blamed for the loss of life.
You have a crowd who are excited, inebriated, and you give them a band to help them release that energy. What do you think's gonna happen?
So how did they do it? How did Limp Bizkit go from being this little band in Jacksonville, Florida, to one of the most hated bands in rock, to now being, well, icons? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. And also, I want to thank Capulet Fest for sponsoring this video. It goes down the weekend of July 1st and 2nd at Thompson Speedway in Thompson, Connecticut. They've got over 30 bands booked, including some very heavy hitters like All That Remains, Norma Jean, Memphis May Fire, Anne Berlin, Emery, Skylit Drive, and Woe Is Me, among many, many others. Personally, I really like Picturesque, who are playing on Sunday, and several of those bands will also be doing meet and greets. The whole thing is all ages, there's going to be food trucks, there's vendors, and a fireworks spectacular on both nights. It's 2 stages, it's 2 days of rock with over 30 national bands. Basically, it's the ultimate rock festival for New England. And if you want to check it out, the best deal is the Capulet Royal Pass. That gets you everything. You get 1 weekend ticket, you get meet and greet for both days, weekend VIP parking, early entry, air-conditioned bathrooms, and VIP merch. And best of all, if you use the coupon code PRMBA, you can save 10% on a single day and 15% on a 2-day pass or the Capulet Royal Pass. So check it out at the link in the description of this video, or go to CapuletFest.com, and please follow them on Facebook and Instagram at CapuletENT.
Partner, keep on rolling, baby. You know what time it is.
But to answer all those questions, I need to start at the beginning. The idea for Limp Bizkit started out way back in the early 90s, when Fred Durst's life was kind of falling apart. He had just gotten discharged from the Navy, he broke up with his daughter's mom, and was working for his dad's landscaping company. And he had the idea of starting a band that combined metal and rap, which back then was a really fresh idea. So he went around the Jacksonville scene and recruited all the best people from different backgrounds. They started out playing local shows, and quickly started drawing crowds based on their stage presence and also Fred's incredible sense for marketing. Danny Wimmer, who is now the founder of these huge rock festivals like Aftershock and Louder Than Life, but also owned a venue in Jacksonville and hosted many of the early Limp Bizkit shows, said they had the biggest draw for a local band. They went from playing to like 10 people to 800 within months. Fred was just the genius marketing guy. It was incredible. He's so in touch with the kids. And one example of that is the band's name, which is, well, to put it bluntly, terrible. Although, to be fair, it's not as bad as some of the other names that they considered for the band, like Gimp Disco, Bitch Piglet, and even Blood Fart. But as Fred later explained, that was all deliberate. The entire point of the name was just to get attention. The name is there to turn people's heads away. A lot of people pick up the disc and go, Limp Bizkit, oh, they must suck. Those are the people that we don't even want listening to our music. And to go along with Fred's marketing brain, there was Wes Borland's creative brain. Wes originally started out as a visual artist who even went to school for sculpture with the goal of doing special effects in movies. And he channeled that into all kinds of ridiculous things for the band, like wearing a bunny suit on stage and all his other outfits over the years, that immediately made them stand out from all the other local bands. And the point I want to make here is that from day one, the band knew that making music was not enough. If you want your music to actually be heard, well, you need to do something to get attention. And they knew that for better or worse, sometimes being hated is just as good as being loved.
The Reckless Crew was a breakdancing group that Fred formed.
He just loved to battle other people to show him that he was better.
But what I'm always especially interested in is that one moment in any band's career when they go from nothing to something. Because that is the one domino that when it gets knocked down, makes all the other dominoes fall down. And for Limp Bizkit, that moment happened in 1995 when Korn came through Jacksonville, was sick of it all, and Fred talked Korn into coming by his tattoo shop after the show. I'd only been tattooing for like a couple weeks, and I lied to them and told them I'd been tattooing for a long time. We were drunk, they were drunk, they fell for it, and it got them back to the house. I drew up this thing that said Korn, and it kind of looked like horn, but Fieldy was so wasted that he was like, yeah man, let's do it. And that was the beginning of their friendship. Korn took an unsigned Limp Bizkit on 2 tours, and that was it. They had finally made it out of Jacksonville. And on the back of that momentum, they signed with Flip Records and went into the studio with Ross Robinson and came out with their first album, $3 Bill Y'all, completed, as well as a brand new distribution deal with Interscope Records. But the album didn't really do much when it came out, and it looked like they might be yet another one of these bands with some local hype that was never able to turn that into any sort of national attention. And again, what I'm always interested in are these sort of specific moves by a band that changes their career. And for Limp Bizkit, the next one of these was a controversial marketing move by their label.
Hey man, wake up and smell the concrete. Strange to see you change like the LB.
They were having very little success getting their first single, Counterfeit, on the radio. So the label decided, why don't we just pay for airtime? Interscope paid an Oregon radio station $5,000 to play that song a minimum of 50 times over 5 weeks, with a disclaimer before the song that this was a paid placement. And somehow or another, word got out that they had done this, and it got a ton of negative coverage in the media. To a lot of people, it kind of felt like this was pay for play, and they didn't like that. But ironically, all this just gave Limp Bizkit what they wanted all along, which was more exposure. And it was yet another sign that for Limp Bizkit, maybe the best thing was actually to be the band that everybody loves to hate. And all the work that they'd put in was about to pay off with their first real hit, their cover of the 80s classic Faith by George Michael, which was the third and final single off of $3 Bill Y'all.
I'm showing you that door, rock bottom have faith.
By pure coincidence, George Michael had recently gotten arrested for allegedly showing his junk to a cop in a public bathroom, so his name was in the headlines, and that helped make this cover even bigger. It was their first song to really get picked up by radio and MTV, and with that, they had finally arrived as a breakout band. And once again, the common thread was pissing people off. As Wes Borland said, what we've heard from George Michael's people is that he hates it and hates us for doing it. He apparently really despises it. Their next big move was joining Ozfest 98, where again they leaned into the hate by coming out on stage from a giant toilet. As Fred Durst described it, everyone was saying Limp Bizkit is shit, so we said, okay, we'll be shit. We'll make a gigantic toilet and come out of it like 5 turds. We got their attention. They were watching the show and they were buying the records. You gotta do that sometimes, man. And if you haven't noticed the pattern yet, it's very simple. The more people hated Limp Bizkit, the bigger they got. As a Rolling Stone piece from around this time put it, this here is rock's red-headed stepchild, the rude, crude combo that discerning listeners love to hate. The lightning rod for much of the hostility is Fred Durst, 66 inches of tightly wound cracker with a scrappy goatee, steely blue eyes, and a free-floating belligerence. And counterbalancing all of that was Wes Borland, the artsy, kind of creative side of the band, who even the biggest Limp Bizkit haters seem to recognize as a really legitimately talented musician who also had much less of an antagonistic attitude, as well as DJ Lethal, formerly of House of Pain, who again pretty much everybody recognized as a really talented, chill guy, and whose DJing added a genuinely innovative creative element to the band. And with Faith blowing up, they went out on the Family Values tour with Korn, Ice Cube, Rammstein, and Orgy, a tour that was one of the most defining moments in nu metal, before getting to work on their second album, Significant Other. And their mission with this album was really to get out of Korn's shadow. As Wes Borland said, too many people started calling us Baby Korn. Korn showed us the ropes of touring, but I don't think we've taken anything musically from them. Anyway, it's time to leave the mother's nest, which they definitely did with this album. On the back of singles like Nookie, Rearranged, and Break Stuff, the album hit #1 on Billboard and catapulted Limp Bizkit to stardom. They were all over MTV and the media, and by 2000, they were every bit as big of a band as Korn. And once again, controversy was the vehicle that made Limp Bizkit bigger and bigger and bigger. First, there was their beef with Slipknot after Fred apparently said that Slipknot fans were the fat, ugly kids.
Limp Bizkit, somebody in Limp Bizkit had the audacity to say to one of our good friends, who's a very reliable source, that Slipknot fans are nothing but a bunch of fat, ugly kids.
There was also Fred Durst's rumored relationship with Britney Spears. Apparently, they had spent some time in the studio together. Fred said that there was some sort of relationship beyond just work. Britney said there wasn't, and regardless of what actually did or didn't happen, the point is that it kept both of their names in the tabloid headlines. And what could be better marketing for a band than potentially smashing the hottest pop singer on the planet?
Whoever thought you'd be banging Britney Spears?
You had the world's biggest virgin.
We definitely weren't boyfriend and girlfriend. Nobody ever
You're not
said
saying that.
Right.
No.
You banged her, and you had feelings for her. It could have developed into something, but she had to distance herself.
I'll tell you right now.
Go ahead.
Girl is a liar.
They also got dissed by Eminem in his song Girls because they got caught up in his beef with Everlast. And remember, DJ Lethal was in House of Pain with Everlast.
And the reason that I dissed him is because when all the beef with Everlast was going on, right, they wanted to jump in the middle of it. They wanted to jump in it with me and take my side, right? Fred Durst is like, yeah, man, write me some shit, bro. I'll say that shit. And then DJ Lethal, man, I hate Everlast, man. He's a So we set up the studio time. The day I get to the studio, Fred pages us, yo, I got a toothache, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it today. And DJ Lethal says he doesn't know how he feels about doing the song because he's still cool with Everlast. So I'm thinking, all right, if he's still cool with Everlast, then why was he telling me he hates him?
And even though it was a diss, still it's the same dynamic. Eminem was at the time the hottest up-and-coming rapper on the planet, and to even be dissed by him was great marketing for Limp Bizkit. And another controversy that kind of fueled the narrative that Fred Durst is this aggro frat boy douche is the Korn song All in the Family, where Fred and Jonathan went back and forth playfully dissing each other, including, unfortunately, calling each other the F slur several times.
It's just too bad that you're a faggot on a lower level. So you're from Jacksonville.
This was obviously not well received by a lot of people, but again, it got their name in the headlines of everything from Rolling Stone to the LA Times. But all of that paled in comparison to what I think of as the defining moment in Limp Bizkit's career, which was Woodstock 99. As we've probably all seen, their set on the second day of the festival was pure chaos. That iconic shot of people crowd surfing during their set on a piece of plywood really sums it up. And the rest of the festival was dangerously close to Mad Max territory as well, with food and water shortages, open sewage flowing everywhere, and worst of all, several reported accounts of assaults. And Limp Bizkit was implicitly, and maybe sometimes even explicitly, blamed for a lot of that by promoters and the media.
You have a crowd who are excited, inebriated, and you give them a band to help them release that energy. What do you think's gonna happen?
Which personally, I think is totally unfair. It's the promoter's job to hire security, provide bathrooms and all that, not the band. Fred Durst's job is to put on a show, which is exactly what he did. But either way, the fact of the matter is that Woodstock 99 was an absolutely massive moment in pop culture that got tons and tons of mainstream media coverage, and Limp Bizkit was at the center of all of that. And I think Fred probably was genuinely upset by that coverage, because, I mean, who wouldn't be upset about being accused of all those things? But once again, they used it as marketing. The whole video for their song Rearranged is about them being on trial for these alleged crimes at some unspecified concert that clearly is Woodstock 99. And I'm not going to say that the band did all these things as some sort of cynical marketing campaign, but I do think that Fred in particular knew exactly what he was doing. As he put it in a Rolling Stone interview from 1999, it's another reason to not like this obnoxious band. This guy who starts riots at shows, stage dives, pulls chicks on stage, tells promoters to kiss his ass. You gotta hate this guy. Well, I hope it turns into the guy you love to hate. Like Danny Wimmer said about them back when they were just a local band, I think Fred Durst has always had an incredible natural sense of marketing and how to create pop culture moments around the band. For example, my personal favorite, his duet with Christina Aguilera.
Can anybody see that we gotta get it out? Get it out! We gotta get it out! We gotta get it out!
And again, this was not an accident. This is just how Fred's mind works. As he said to Rolling Stone, "This kind of shit I get off on. I'm at parties with Jack Nicholson, Dana Carvey. I'm at places where they hang out. I'm on all the A-lists." And just to be clear, I don't mean any of this as criticism. I think Fred Durst is genuinely brilliant at what he does, which is getting attention. And the fact that Limp Bizkit is still headlining festivals and that anytime they do anything, it's on all the news sites is proof of that. Because what this reveals is something that I've talked about many times before, but I'm going to keep talking about, which is that this isn't really the music business, it's the entertainment business. Just showing up and playing your guitar is not enough. I know that a lot of musicians don't like to hear that, but it's just reality. And I think that is a huge part of why rock now is less popular than it was in the 2000s. When you had people like Fred Durst, Corey Taylor, and Pete Wentz, who understood how to play that game and were constantly in the headlines. Whereas these days, it feels like people in rock bands are almost ashamed of standing out. Like being some sort of larger than life character that people pay attention to is a bad thing. Like aside from a few people like MGK and Ronnie Radke, who you can say what you want about their music, but both of them are obviously huge stars, putting up the numbers to prove it. Other than them, it seems like everybody just wants to go on stage in jeans and a t-shirt, like some guy that just walked in off the street, and never say anything controversial. And with that kind of attitude, can we be surprised that rock has fallen off in popularity? So regardless of what you think of Limp Bizkit's music or Fred Durst as a person, personally, what I think the rock world needs right now is very simple. We need another Fred Durst and more Limp Bizkits. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and I would like to thank everyone who supports on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get all my podcasts and videos early. There are members-only channels on my Discord that I'm super active in. I do giveaways, and there's even a way to have me review your music. So if any of that sounds cool, hit the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.